talking about one or many. So steps of the scientific method. We did observations. Observations is last week's topic. We'll do a little bit more on observations this week. Today is hypothesis. We'll talk about experiments next week and results and conclusion the following week. So, like we said, I've got a theory. This is actually wrong. Scientists don't say I've got a theory. This is how people use it in everyday language, but this isn't actually how the word is supposed to be used. So a theory must have a very large amount of experimental evidence to support it. When you're just guessing at something, you have a hypothesis. The theory is the last step of the scientific method, if it even happens. It does not happen very often. So you guys should just be filling in the blanks. Asking questions. After you've made your observations, it's time to think about questions you have about the data you collected. So you make your observations, you see X, Y, and Z, and you start asking questions about that data. Remember, scientists make two kinds of observations, qualitative with descriptions and quantitative with numbers. You can include both of those in your questions. A hypothesis. A hypothesis is your attempt at trying to answer your own questions. So you make observations, you ask some questions about it, and then you make an attempt to answer your questions based on logic, based on the things that you know. So the official definition of a hypothesis is a possible explanation for a set of observations or data. And that is the definition that will be on your attendance quizzes all week long. And something important about a hypothesis is it must be testable. In other words, to have a good hypothesis, it must be easy to run tests on it. Usually it's an if-then statement. If I do this thing, then I think this other thing will happen. When you start out writing hypotheses, this is the format you use, and you're all starting out with them. So for example, you make an observation, your car won't start. That's your observation. You have a car, it won't start. And then you make an inference. Something's wrong with my car. You format your hypothesis. So if you had something wrong with your car, what do you think you should do to try and fix it? Tell me in the chat box. Make it an if-then statement. If I do what, then what will happen to your car? What do you think? This is stuff you have to write down. So what do you think? Type something in the chat box. What are things that could be wrong with your car causing it not to start? Engine. Yep. 1, be more specific. Your hypothesis needs to be specific. So Sarkis, what would you do to the engine to try and fix it? Leslie, what kind of damage? Be more specific. Jose, the battery, good. What about the battery? What would you do to the battery to try and fix it? No fuel. Yep. All right, so now that you've named things that could be wrong with your car, put it in an if-then statement. If I do this, then what's the end result? What do you want to happen to your car? So like for the engine, or for the fuel, if I do what, then what's going to happen to your car? You got to be able to make if-then statements. This is going to be on your quizzes this week. If your hypothesis is not in an if-then statement, then that's going to be marked wrong. So you guys all gave me ideas. You said fuel, you said engine, you said insides. Now put that in a sentence. Your sentence should start with if and have then in the middle of it. Sarkis, yours was about the engine. So your sentence should start with if, have an engine. What's the end result? Israel, what do you want to happen in the end to your car? The result should be getting the car fixed. Good. So it should be then, your second half of your statement, then the car should be fixed. But you got to do the if. If the car is out of fuel, then I would need to fill the car up. Good, Dresden. Then the car would go. The car would start. So Leslie, yours would be if the engine is broken. Where's your then? If I get my car fixed, then what? What do you want to happen to your car in the end? For it to start. So Dominic, that's the second half of your sentence. Where's your first half? You need two parts to the sentence. If I do something to the car, you guys gave a bunch of different ideas, then the car will start. That's your then. There you go. If the coolant has a leak, I fix it, and then the car works fine. Yep, there you go, Juan. There's your specific. There you go. If I charge the battery, then the car will start. Yep, very good. There is the flow to your hypothesis. If I do this one thing, if I fill up the car with gas, if I change the battery, if I fix a fuel leak, fix the coolant leak, then your ideal result is my car will start. So when you write a hypothesis, you need that whole sentence. You guys are going to be writing hypotheses. And you got to write that whole sentence. If I do this one thing, then these things will happen. And then you run experiments. Then you actually do the things. You actually fill the car up. You actually change the battery. That would be your experiment. And then in the end, you can either say, scientists say, I reject that hypothesis or I support it. If you fill up your car with gas and your car starts, you know that you were correct. Your hypothesis was correct. So we say your hypothesis was supported. If you fill up your car with gas and still your car won't start and nothing happened, well, that hypothesis gets rejected and you got to start all over and make another one. Then you change the battery. If you change the battery and your car still won't start, that hypothesis gets rejected. Then you got to try something else. This is something you guys actually do every day. You don't know what to do, you try something. If it doesn't work, you throw out that idea and you go with a new one. That's how hypotheses work. So make sure on your slide, on your notes, you have some kind of possible hypothesis that we just talked about. A lot of you did not include the discussion from last week and you got points taken off, so make sure you include our discussion from this week. All right, another practice question. Like I said, a hypothesis is a guess or prediction on what you think will happen during an experiment. It's based on your observations and all the data you collected. It consists of one sentence that links two variables or factors together in a relationship. So we have another example. You have two factors. You have candy and you have cavities in your teeth. Now in the chat box, put these two factors into a relationship using an if-then sentence. If I do one thing, then what do you think will happen? One, yes, you always use the if-then. That's why we're practicing. We practiced with the car, now we're practicing with the candy. If you have too much candy, then you have a high chance of getting cavities. Very good. There's your hypothesis. He took the two factors, candy and cavities in your teeth, and he put them together into a relationship. If I eat too much candy, then I think I will have cavities in my teeth. The opposite could also be true. If I don't eat a lot of candy, then I won't have a lot of cavities. Either one of those sentences would work. So make sure you have one of these sentences in your notes as our discussion, as we're talking about it. You got two great examples in the chat from Israel and Zarkis. If my teeth hurt, then I need to go to the dentist. Yeah, that's probably true, Justin, but those aren't the two factors I gave you. The two factors I gave you are candy and cavities in your teeth, so you got to use those words in your sentence, in your hypothesis.